Chapter 12, Section 4, Printing an Invoice. So hopefully you have written this tutorial. Starts on page 552 with invoiceprinter.java. That way you can follow along as we go through some of the concepts here. So we want to print out this invoice. So what exactly are we supposed to do? Describe the charges for a set of products in certain quantities. Obviously can't be hard-coded, it has to be able to be changed if I have more than one invoice. Omit complexities, dates, taxes, invoice, customer numbers. Print the invoice. Billing address, all line items, amount due, and line item, a description, the unit price, quantity order, total price. So, 5 boxes of Cheerios at $1 a piece, $5, etc. We're not going to do any user interface at this time. And a test program. So something that should look like this. So each one of these would be a line item for toaster, price $29.95, total it out, the customer, and the total amount due from adding up all of my total columns, as well as the general header and format layout. So CRC cards, we'll blow through this pretty quick. Discover my classes. Nouns are possible classes. So I could have an invoice, address, line item, product, description, price, quantity, total, amount due. Those are all the sort of the headers on that invoice picture. And we want to sort of knock them down to get rid of any sort of redundancy. Okay, for instance, the line item has a product and a description and a price, so maybe we could combine them. So line item records the product, description, variable, the product, etc. So after we eliminate, we come down to an invoice, an address, a line item, and a product class. Invoice and address must be able to self-format, so they need to return a finished product that I can work with when I'm done. Add collaborators to the invoice card. Product and line item CAC cards look like this. Product needs to be able to get the description, get the unit price. Line item needs to format the item and get the total price using the product class as a collaborator. Invoice must be populated. So the invoice uses address, line item, and product. It has to format the overall look of the invoice, add a product and a quantity. So the UML diagram. So I have invoice, which is dependent upon product, and line item, and invoice, and the address. Use a Java doc to document this code. Leave the body blank, run Java doc to obtain a formatted version, and then you can print it out. So we did it. Here's some of the reasons why. We're going to go through this quick. So method documentation. So it would look something like this. And again, we have no implementation at this point. We're just trying to come up with our general documentation for the class in our design phase. So a few of these are all starting on page 549 in your book. And then we can print out, when we get done, we can print out the actual HTML Java doc, and then this would be what you would have to work with. You have your general headers, everybody can have the same sort of thing, and then you can work on the actual implementation piece by piece. So, instance variables from the UML diagram look for associated classes. They yield instance variables into implementation. So invoice aggregates from the address and line item classes. Every invoice has one billing address, and an invoice can have many line items. So there's no limit on how many line items I can have, but only one address. So we're going to do an array list of line items instead of an array, because again, it's not a fixed amount, only one billing address. Line item needs to store a product, so I need to be able to have a product instance field and a quantity of those products that I'm going to have. Each line item is a unique product and a unique amount. Methods then we would fill in pretty easy. So get total just needs to get my price times my quantity. It's pretty simple. So here's what it looks like, starting again on page 552. So the printer, this is my main class, actually spits it out to the screen. So I create an address, I create an invoice, and I add 3 products to my invoice. So we added them to that array list. And then I print, they have a method called format, which actually prints the output. So the invoice class, import array lists. I've got my billing address and my line items. So initially I just set my address, and I initialize my array list. Okay, I need to be able to add products. I'm going to obviously add them one at a time with the product and how many I bought as you go through. So line item, an item is a new line item. Product and my quantity from my parameters, and then add them to the list. So generate a unique line item, add that item to my array list. Then the formatting, this is the tricky part. We're not going to go over the fancy things. This is the spacing and where it relays on the screen, a couple new lines, etc. But just know that this is how it prints out. You want to mess with where it looks, start changing these numbers and see what changes. And then enhanced for loop, go through my items array for my line items, temporarily store each one as a line as the temporary item, and then go through my string and tack it on. String R, keep adding my items in. Then tag on the amount due at the end, formatted in a monetary amount with 2 decimal places. Get the amount due and return this whole string to be able to print it to the screen. Get amount due just returns the amount due, my total price. Go through each item and I add the amount due to the total price of the item, and I just sum that all up. Alright, public class line item starts at page 554 of your book. So a quantity and a product, so as passed as parameters, so I save my quantity and save the product. Get my total price, which is the price of each product, times the quantity that I have, and format the description of this line item. Product class has a description of the product and a price, so then I need to save this as a string and double A price, say those are my instance fields. Get the description just returns the description, get the price just returns the price. Then lastly, my mailing address. It's all going to be a bunch of strings as parameters on my constructor. So the name, street, city, state, zip, save them all, and then the formatting occurs. So a new line street, new line city, new line state, plus my zip, and return that. And then I have created an invoice printing program. So which class is responsible for computing the amount due? And what are its collaborators for this task? So the invoice is responsible for computing the amount due, and it collaborates with the line item class. So if you go back to the invoice, I get the total amount due when I just sequence through my array list of items, and I just add up the total prices as I go. Why do the format methods return string objects instead of directly printing to system out? This reduces coupling and enables us to reuse the classes when we want to show the invoice in a dialog box, a web page, or just somewhere else than using the console.